Hi, welcome back to Finance with Lee. Today, before I get started with the video, I want to just point out real quick that this is a contrarian point of view, and I do think that Roth IRAs are a very good idea in general, but they do have a lot of negatives to them, and I just wanted to point out a lot of the negatives. But don't think that I just hate Roth IRAs because I don't. If you don't have any investments right now, then they're going to be a great option for you. But my contention here in this video is that if you have other options and you are an investor who has been doing it for a while and you are at a point in your life where you understand a lot more about investing, then they're probably not going to be one of the top things on your list as far as that goes. So let's get right into it with the first reason I think that Roth IRAs may not be the best idea, and that's that pulling money out is going to be costly. So if you don't know already, you can only put $6,000 per year into a Roth IRA. Now that's no matter what. There are several instances where you can pull out your money plus some of your interest if it's like an emergency or something, but you're always able to just pull out your investment. So if you invest, let's say over the course of 5 years, you invest 30,000, which is the maximum that you can invest in a 5-year period, and then you have some reason and you need that $30,000, let's say you have another investment, so you pull out 30,000, you can never reinvest that. So even if you are able to make more cash flow with that investment and now you want to go and replace that, you can never replace it because the max is $6,000 no matter what. So it's really frustrating when you take your money out, you can never put it back in. You still have to follow that $6,000 maximum. Now, is having your money in there at all better than not having it in there? Sure, let's say it's only in there for 5 years, but you get a lot of tax-free interest from it and a lot of tax-free growth. Well, that's good, but it's really frustrating and it's almost just not worth it if you have other types of investments that you like to put yourself in. Especially if you don't like to be 100% invested in stocks, right? If you like to put money in bonds or treasuries, and then you like to buy real estate or something like that, well, you can't really use a Roth IRA if that's one of your strategies. Um, so yeah, if you're not doing anything else, then it's a really good idea, and it kind of you're not very likely to pull the money out, but it can be really frustrating not to be able to pull that money out. So the tax advantages, they also don't benefit a whole lot of investors, right? Because all that a Roth IRA is a tax advantaged account. So you have to follow all these really strict guidelines, and the benefit for doing everything the right way and being perfect with the way that you manage this account, you get this tax benefit where you don't have to pay taxes on any of your interest. But at the end of the day, I don't pay tax. I don't plan on paying tax anytime soon. Under the current tax system, I'll never have to be concerned with tax for the rest of my life. And what I do is I invest in real estate, which is already a lot more tax advantaged than the Roth IRA. And if you're really rich, that's where the Roth IRA would benefit you the most because you have a really large income. But if you're really rich, you probably already have an accountant. You already probably know the best ways to try to avoid paying taxes to the maximum extent possible. And if you're gonna be maybe not so wealthy in retirement, you probably aren't going to be that concerned with taxes anyways. So they're very moderate tax advantages. It just isn't worth it if you have any other options. Like I said, if you're investing in real estate, it's just not worth the hassle, quite frankly. Again, I know I mentioned this earlier, but the contribution limit is very low. So $6,000 is your yearly maximum. So that's $500 a month. And I know if you're not investing right now, that may seem like an astronomical number to invest $500 a month. But if you're really, really, really trying hard and you make a good amount of money, let's say you make $50 to $100,000 a year, somewhere in that range, investing at least $1,000 a month is pretty reasonable. That's a pretty reasonable amount. More even would be pretty reasonable, right? You could almost invest half your income if you're making that amount of money. So, really, with that $6,000 limit, you can't just have this account. You've got to have multiple accounts. So, you've either got to have a 401k plus this Roth IRA, or you and your significant other, if you're married, have to have a Roth IRA, or you have to have the Roth IRA and the 401k plus some other accounts. And I'm not saying it's bad to have all these accounts. Sometimes it's worth juggling around more accounts to try and get the maximum amount of benefits, but it really doesn't give you a huge bang for your buck when it comes to how complicated it is. So if you have a 401k with an employer match, then obviously the money that your employer is giving you as a match, you would not get that anyways. So that should always be where your first priority is to maximize that employer match, because you're getting essentially 100% on your investment. If you invest $100 and your employer will give you $100 for free, that's an amazing return right there. That would put you in a situation where your Roth IRA would be your second place that you're putting money anyways, and your second most advantaged account. Whereas if you just put all that money into a 401k instead of putting up to the employer match in the 401k and then going to the Roth IRA, that might be a little more complicated than you really want to make your life for a very small return. And personally, I would rather just take the employer match. I'm currently in the military, so I don't have the 401k, but if I was in a normal civilian job, I would take the employer match and maximize that, and then everything else after that, I would either save it to invest in real estate and put it in a temporary like bond fund until I had enough for a down payment, or I would just invest in the stock market in a normal stock market account. Of course, I would maximize that $6,000, and in my personal situation, I think it's a good option, but the situation would have to be one in which I have no available real estate investments, I have no available business opportunities, and I have no available employer match. So if all three of those things are completely off the table, yes, this is absolutely where I would go with my money, and I would relish the opportunity to get this tax advantage. But for me, I'm always in a situation where I have a lot more opportunities than I have money, not the opposite way. So there's always a real estate investment, there's always business opportunities. I just don't have enough money. So I'm not to the point where I have so much money that I have no other opportunities, and now I'm down to actually having to invest in a Roth IRA, and that's my last resort. So also, let's consider capital gains. So, really, all you can have in the Roth IRA is stocks and other, paper assets. And so, you're really not going to pay capital gains tax anyway. So, if you look at this chart, you'll see that if you look at the single column or the married column, this is how much money you can make. So, I'm married, so I can make up to $78,750 a year and pay 0% in capital gains tax, and up to $488,850 and only pay that 15% rate. So if you go and my accountant just does all the taxes and determines how much money I'm making, it's probably going to be a lower number than what I'm actually bringing in my putting into my bank account. So the amount that I'm actually going to be paying at a 15% rate is very small. So again, I'm not an accountant. This isn't tax advice, but if you're making money from just a job, then maybe you do have quite a bit that's going to be in this 15% region. But if you're making money from um, long-term capital gains, you're making money from real estate, you're making money from maybe a side hustle, and you have expenses that you're claiming, then you're going to have a lot of things that you can deduct from your taxes and make your income look a lot lower than what's actually going into your bank account. And then you'll be paying a very low tax rate, possibly $0 on your capital gains. And of course, when you are investing in the Roth IRA, I understand that you're investing that for retirement. It's for the purpose of waiting until retirement. However, these capital gains taxes have never really been substantial. And if you think, I hear a lot people I hear a lot of people saying that, they're going to raise taxes. They're going to raise taxes on the wealthy. And so if I'm going to be in one of these really high tax tiers when I'm retired, because the argument is, well, I'm going to be in a really high tax bracket when I'm retired because I'm going to be so rich when I'm retired. And then this is just going to help me avoid those taxes. Well, if you look back historically at how much tax rich people have actually paid, it's pretty low. And there have been 90% tax brackets before, but nobody actually paid that rate. So there's always a way for rich people to come out. And if you think that that's not true, just if you look at the stimulus package that just passed the House, right now it's the 16th of May, and there was a stimulus package that just passed the House, and it doesn't look like it's going to pass the Senate in its current form, but it includes a huge tax break for very, very wealthy people. It basically says that your state and local taxes that you pay on real estate will be deductible from your federal income tax. Now, of course, that will help some uh, moderately wealthy individuals or people that have a very expensive home that aren't wealthy, but for the most part, the vast majority of the people who are going to see a tax savings from that is wealthy people. And so, not to pick sides or to play politics in this, but you can see that if you were to ask most people if Republicans want to lower taxes or raise taxes on the wealthy, they'd probably say that they want to lower taxes on the wealthy. But we can also see that in this bill, that it was passed by Democrats, it was written by Democrats, that also gives massive tax breaks to wealthy people. So, what I will say about politics, without picking sides here, is that both sides have incentives to make sure that rich people are taken care of. And I don't think that that's a big secret that rich people have always had massive tax breaks, and everybody always talks about taxing rich people at a higher rate, but there are always workarounds like the one that came into this bill. It's pretty clearly and objectively a tax break for very wealthy people. So I wouldn't be concerned too much with the fact that if you do retire pretty wealthy that you'll have to pay a massive amount of tax. And I wouldn't think that you need to just stash all your money away into a Roth IRA to try and avoid paying taxes. Because if you retire and you have a moderate or low income as a retired individual or family or with your spouse, then you're not going to have to really worry about a high tax bracket. At least historically, you're not going to have to worry about a really tremendously large tax bracket. Plus, you can choose a state that if there are really high tax brackets, then you can choose a state that maybe won't tax you as high. Um, but if you are wealthy, and most people think that they're going to retire wealthy, and that's the reason they use this Roth IRA, they say, I'm in a pretty low tax bracket now, but when I retire, I'm going to be in a really high tax bracket. I'm going to be rich. That's when it makes sense to use a Roth IRA. Otherwise, you should just use a traditional IRA if you're making a lot of money now and you're going to retire in a lower tax bracket. So the whole purpose of a Roth IRA is for people who believe that they'll be in a much higher tax bracket when they're retired. But I'm here to show you, and you can look up the data, that it's probably not going to end up being like that. You're probably not going to have to pay that many taxes, and if you have the right accountant and the right strategy, then you probably aren't going to need to worry about taxes if you do retire fairly wealthy. Um, so just to conclude, the Roth IRA can be a great tool, and I recommend it for people who don't really have any other investments for their retirement because it's a very useful account and it does basically prevent you from withdrawing that money. It does prevent you from having to pay taxes on that money when you withdraw money in retirement. So it can be helpful, but I think you just need to use caution and make a good informed decision. Now that you saw my side, and of course, I'm telling you that it's not bad, but it's not all good either. now that I've pointed out several of the cons, you can go and look at a lot of other videos on YouTube, because I would say the vast majority of YouTube videos show you what all the pros and all the great things of a Roth IRA are. So maybe after you're done with this video, go watch a video on why a Roth IRA is good. Try and take all of the facts and all of the opinions to formulate your own strategy to determine whether you think a Roth IRA is right for you. I can tell you that, in my personal opinion, if you're involved in investing and you have more than basically a beginner's level of experience, then you're probably not going to find a Roth IRA to be really useful. But to everybody who says, Lee, what should I invest in, and how should I invest? I always tell them, well, first, if you aren't investing, um, you should max out your TSP or your 401k employer match. And then after that, you should use that Roth IRA. And then I tell them to just basically buy ETFs like, VOO, which is a Vanguard SP 500 ETF. So if you're not experienced, it's a really great tool. If you are experienced, you probably are in a position to where you know if it's a tool you should use or not. But for the most part, I don't see that many very rich and successful people are totally about the Roth IRA. They probably wish that they could put a lot more money into it, but if you're really making a lot of money, it phases out to the point where you can't even invest into it as well. So yeah, guys, this has been basically just me kind of bagging on the Roth IRA, even though it's not the worst product in the world. I just wanted to give you guys the side that nobody really ever tells you. And so if you like what you heard here, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you don't like it or you feel a different way, then please leave that in the comments and I'll respond to you. And, maybe you have a point of view that I've never heard of before, and I'd appreciate it if somebody gave me that. So anyways, have a great day.